Peace and blessing, soul family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. My brothers and sisters, we are living in urgent and emergent times. And with that, the way that we think about things, the way that we talk about things, the way that we communicate with each other needs a sense of emergence. We need a new way to ponder some of the challenges that we're facing. And with that, our guest today, Dr. Bayo Akomolafe, is one who is really excavating language and using poetry and books to bring through. We're going to find out what he's going to bring through. We're going to find out today to bring through some hope and some inspiration. So with that, our guest today, he is rooted with the Yoruba people of West Africa. He's a philosopher, psychologist, professor, and poet. He's a father of two, and he is the author of We Will Tell Our Own Story, The Lions of Africa Speak. Please welcome Bayo Akomolafe.
I feel very welcome, brother. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for being here. And so, yeah, man, there's, I love the ideas that you are bringing through. I love the way that you are utilizing language in new and intriguing ways. And so with that, I'm going to invite us to just drop right in and take a deep breath for ourselves. Scanning the body, feeling what is alive and present. And Bayo, on yet another beautiful day that we get to experience this life, what is most alive within you?
The beauty of the glitch. How things go wrong, and how the wrongness is also alive in ways that escape anticipation and expectation. You know, like a fallen tree might sprout new forests. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. That's how I come into this. I'm a bit exhausted, to be true with you, brother to brother. And yet I feel my exhaustion is not a carceral place. It's not prison, that it is not fully claimed or fully named or fully knowable, that there is something about the glitches of this moment that present new alternatives for being in the world and new ways for being alive and being responsive to the crises of this time. So I'm grateful to the high road, the way, but I'm also grateful to the potholes. That's how I want to put it. Yeah.
Grateful for the potholes and glitches. You know, in the Matrix, they say those glitches are
deja vu. Right?
The deja vu, the glitch in the Matrix is deja vu.
Oh, you're that kind of nerd. I knew you were a nerd. I was like, this guy's a nerd. There's nothing.
I'm a big nerd, bro. Come on. Oh man, you know, I'll go ahead and check in. Adam checking in, brother. I'm feeling you on the exhaustion. I feel like this is a time in the collective where we are all feeling like this sense of like, whoa, what? It's almost like we've got we've gotten to a certain place where all we can see is the potholes. You know what I'm saying? And I guess what I'm checking in with is I'm not afraid to get in those potholes and get my hands dirty, filling them up, bringing some level, some grounded clarity to the collective. You know what I mean? Like there's a line of thinking, especially with social media, that it's like every tragedy that happens, we all got to take sides and give our opinions.
Yes.
And what I'm interested in is holding my children closer, holding my brothers and sisters closer, finding ways of authentic relating and communicating so that we can, like, you know, get a little bit of that light back. And then when we got our cups full, maybe we can go fill a couple of those potholes. You know, that's the energy that I want to carry into the world. And yet I feel the exhaustion too. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I feel you. I'm there too. Right there.
I've got 3 boys, 3 sons. And, you know, I just really feel the call, especially now more than ever, to, like, man, as parents, it is, you know, our utmost responsibility to raise them up in a conscious way, but in a practical way too. You know what I'm saying? This world's got a lot of glitches happening. And so I guess with my exhaustion, I'm just like, let me hold my family a little bit closer during this time.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel. There's a sense in which the built environment, modern civilization, urban settlement, the ways that we have constructed safety and designed inadvertently our bodies to be in relationship with the planet, that is under siege at this moment. It's like we sterilized the wilds so that we could be safe. And now, ironically, safety is haunting us, right?
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
it's like the safety is overwhelming. The safety means, among other things, what some authors might refer to as computational capitalism. It is the plantation creeping out into our lives, the slave plantation. It is something happening in the United States, and immediately it registers in Nigeria and it registers in India, and we're all part of this news, and we're all compelled to respond. And if we don't respond in appropriate ways that have been predetermined, you know, by a hive mind, that if we don't respond in that way, then there's something wrong with you. So it's just like the gesture of modernity was to flatten everything, so we could do anything we want, was to make the road safe and plain. And instead, we are crouching and, you know, shivering in the cold underneath underneath some hut on the highway. And it seems we're paralyzed by this freedom.
Yeah,
we're paralyzed by it.
You know, and that paralysis, it comes from the illusion of safety, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not actual safety. Life is not guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed is death. We are all headed for it. And if we don't begin to acknowledge that on a collective and societal level, I don't mean that in a morbid way. I mean that in a very real and authentic way. It's almost like we have to live our lives in service to this thing which we are all headed for. And in that, there's an acknowledgement that true safety comes from within.
Right.
True safety means, like, you know, I'm gonna command my energy in a particular way. I'm gonna hold myself in a certain way until that time of inevitable death.
Yeah. I mean, brother, it even goes beyond that. I mean, it's not that death is down the line. It's that death is right here in the middle, right? We are here because of dyings.
Yes.
We are constantly flailing, the boundaries of our skin disappearing. We lose millions, hundreds of millions of cells every day. What identity means is still up for grabs. We are not as composite or as well put together, as coherent as we think we are. So life is already hyphenated with death. There's no escaping that. It's not down the line. It's already here, right? so, you know, when I speak of safety, yes, I speak about it in terms of the terraforming archetypal work of modernity. You know, if you read the Nordic mythology of Baldur, you know, and his mother Freya, and his father Odin and Freya. Odin is the chief god, and Freya is a witch, a goddess of the earth. And and they have a beautiful godson called Baldur, and a prophecy comes that he's to die. And Freya does what any mother, I guess, would do with her powers, I guess. Travels the realms, all the universes, all the multiverses, and extracts from every living thing and dead thing and inanimate thing and human thing and more than human thing a promise, a contract. And the contract was, you will not harm my son. She basically tried to recreate the universe as a place of safety around Baldur. And it worked because Baldur was impervious to pain, locked in, right? Just closed in, unable to feel anything because that had been taken away from him. The gods would practice, the gods would practice throwing dangerous objects at him, darts at him, and he was impervious to it. But you see, Freya, and I love the story, Freya misses a spot. She missed a spot. And I think that spot was the mistletoe. And when it came to her attention, she was like, yeah, the mistletoe is an innocent thing. It's not going to harm my son anyway. Loki, the trickster, hears this, fashions a weapon from the mistletoe, gives it to a god, one of the gods throwing darts at Baldur, and he dies. And I feel that's a cautionary tale about the risks of safety, of constructing a world around imperviousness. Because once you're safe, so to speak, you lose something very valuable and vital.
Yeah, and that's the ability to feel, the ability to experience life, to the ability to evolve because of those deaths, because of those little deaths that we are present to every day of our lives. And so with that, how does storytelling play a role in the current narrative? I love the title of your book. We will tell our own story, right? And so how do we speak about these times and tell stories about the times we're in so that our children can actually understand and can maybe avoid some of these glitches that we find ourselves experiencing?
My elders have a very funny proverb. I'm Yoruba. They have a funny proverb that wisdom does not come by speaking straightforwardly. It comes by speaking from the corners of one's mouth, right? There's something beautiful about the physiology of speaking from the corners of one's mouth that I think translated into the traditions of the griot, or what we would call the town crier, right? Who would be sent forth by a king into the village square, the marketplace, to announce something, hitting his gong. Those traditions are dead, more or less now, because we're now hip and living in the city, for better or for worse. But they're dead. But somehow those traditions, I think, made their way across the Atlantic with the slave ships and landed in the Caribbean, in the Americas. In the Americas, they landed in a particular place called the Bronx in New York, and it became hip hop. The trickster traditions of storytelling, speaking from the corners of one's mouth, I think can be barely perceived in rapping, right? In the traditions that became rapping, in bending words and twisting histories and zigzagging through legibility. And I think there's something really important about the storytelling traditions of the griot that is now hyphenated with hip hop that we want to listen to today, right? Because thought is not in here. I might just quote David Bohm, to make this point, that thought is not, we're not in control of thought. Thought is shape-shifting our bodies. I mean, we're led to perceive that we are thinking, but instead we are enlisted in paradigms of thought, right? I hope you get. So I think I think the paradigm we're in right now, this one of safety, this one of tribalisms, this one of the Anthropocene, this one of the human, this one of coloniality, this one of mastery is crumbling. Yes. And I think we can support this crumbling process by telling stories from the corners of our mouth. And how do we do that?
Yeah.
Various means. I think I speak often about speculative fabulation. And that for me is a refusal to stick to history. That's not a way of saying alternative facts, by the way, right?
Okay, what is it?
That is a way of noticing that history is produced in the present, that history is already political. I mean, the dominant patriarchal narrative is that history is just this thing that is already there, that only some can view it scientifically and recall it with perfect memory or near perfect memory and present it as facts. But we're learning today, I like what Saidiya Hartman says about facts, that facts are the preferred fiction of the nation state, right? Yeah. And I think what we're trying to do today, what decoloniality is inviting us to do so that we can glimpse new futures, new ways of being with each other, new ways of being with our families, with our children. Different political imaginaries are only possible when we contribute a sense of storytelling that does not adhere to the straight and narrow, that allows us to become fugitive, that allows us to look like children at our, children have there's something about children, they look at inanimate objects and they're animate to them.
Yes.
A piece of paper is a spaceship, a cotton box is a valley, that kind of perverse, queer, dangerous, fugitive manipulation of reality is speculative fabulation. And rappers do that all the time. Well, some rappers.
Yes. The greats do. And you know who else did it? Like the Muhammad Ali's, the Chuck Berrys. It's like they spoke to us in a way that was also subliminal.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like that type of artistry is required when we're describing the interactions of human beings and of history, what you're calling history.
Yeah. Yes.
And so
it's an art form. Yeah.
It's an art form. And so what do we do? Do we turn the TVs off and just gather around fires and start telling our stories again? How does it look from your perspective?
I mean, turning the TVs off is never a bad idea. Never a bad idea. It's very difficult to do that now because I think the TV is more than the instrument in front of our living rooms, right? We are swimming in chemical, algorithmic, rhizomatic tides of cybernetic patternings, the media saturation that exceeds the boundaries of the box, right? So the TV is basically the environment. Right now, we are in TV. We are TV bodies.
Oh, so we are. I want to sit with that concept for just a second, because there's a lot of talk about, like, are we in a simulation? You've heard these theories. And what you're describing is like, yes, in a way we are in a simulation, but it's of our own doing.
The simulation theories, I feel that you might think of them through transhumanist approaches and theories. I think there's something about them that want to escape from the real or want to escape from the material, right? Yes. But there's something that is, I think, worth looking at in that take about simulation. That does not necessarily need to subscribe to a supernature or a conspiratorial pyramid that is controlling our level of reality. I don't think we need to do that. But what is important to notice is that reality itself and how society is arranged is already conspiratorial. You don't need a committee, a hidden block of people or reptilians governing the show. We just need to notice that, as Yoruba people do, when they say aye, there's something about that word that is very fascinating. the English people translate it as life, and that is such a dull translation. It's just like life. No. It's that.
Aye.
Is that aye? You know, to a Yoruba person who knows where it's at. You know, that means something more than just saying life. It means, I struggle here. It means that there are powers and principalities at large, and we are only close to what it means. We're just barely we're just barely bursting through the surface. There's a whole underground network of happenings that we're blind to.
Yes. And
the shaman, the babalawo, knows about. But we as modern citizens think we're all that, but we don't know nothing, right? Yeah. that's the deal. So I guess with the invitation of simulation, it's not to escape or to rush to a technological singularity in some far out future. Is to notice that we are immersed in things that exceed us. And that calls for humility. That calls for, we're exposed, brother. That's what I'm saying. We're exposed. We're not as independent or as free or as liberal or as contained as we think we are.
And so if we're not contained, then what are we?
We are the web. We are the rhizome. We are ecologies in their happenings. We are concatenated and imbricated and entangled with each other in ways that escape the very, very puerile attempts to tribalize politics, right? In many ways, even polarities feed each other. You know, this is what I say when I say that, when I say the times are urgent, let us slow down. I'm trying to invite people to notice that even extremities are doing things that exceed our binary options or outcomes, you know, the garbage in, garbage out options of victory or defeat, right? I can tell you stories from Hindu mythology that about polarity feeding each other in secret now. Do you want to hear that one?
Yes,
just
please.
Briefly.
Yes.
It's called Samudra Manthan. And it's this awesome story and tale about the Devas and the Asuras, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Devas are like the Yoruba Orishas. They're demigods. They're the good guys, right? Angels. The Asuras are the demons. You're the bad guys. You're villains. They're Voldemorts. They're those guys, right? I dropped that one for you, my nerd brother. We have this 1,000-year war, you see? And the architecture of this battle is such that the structure of this war is that it's like a tug of war situation. They're holding on to a giant snake. In fact, I think it's the king of serpents, whose name is Vasuki, the Nagas, the serpents. So they're holding on to the snakes. The Asuras are holding on to the head of the snake. And I think the tail of the snake is held on to by the Devas. The middle of the snake is coiled around a giant mountain, a mountain that dips like a pole into the ocean, right? And every time they pull and tug, you know, the political left versus the political right, the mountain in the middle churns the ocean of milk. And as it's churning and churning, it's curdling the ocean. And the ocean becomes an ocean of curds, yogurt, basically, right? That produces evil things and good things that are largely missing when we stick to the surface level analysis of who's winning the tug of war, that other things are secretly being produced. And that's my point, that sometimes we often think of ourselves as closed beings, independent and free. And I think that does not allow us to notice how we are constantly in intramolecular exchanges with the environment and with those even that we disagree with. So this is why the trickster is always present, the griot, the trickster, to tell us stories in perverse ways, to help us see that, no, you're not against that guy. In fact, your skin is having levels and levels of conversation with that guy you oppose that you may never know anything about, you may never be able to put into language. So we need a different kind of politics, is where I'm going with this.
Yeah. We need, when you were speaking, I was just like, man, we really need that trickster energy within the system, you know, like the coyote medicine is good medicine. And when you said this word aye, it reminds me of the Lakota word aho, you know, which is all my relations. It's not me, it's not life, it's not my life, it's all my relations. And so you know, I love this, the visualization of the web that we're a part of. And even this tug of war brings me back to the body. In a somatic way, we experience these things with our own maybe individual tug of war, and maybe the senses, the pleasures, or the sicknesses, the diseases that are brought out by that curding of our own ocean. So I really follow that. And so for you, what is the what would you like to see politically? What would you like to see happen?
Right now, we have a politics that is largely dedicated to seeking recognition. I'm speaking from a minoritarian point of view. We have a politics that is dedicated to speaking truth to power. But I'm of the opinion, along with brothers like Fred Moulton, that one does not speak truth to power. To speak truth to power is to inadvertently submit to the software and the training and the subjugation of the nation state, right? That kind of politics, I guess what if I were to put this in a beautiful figure, I think we need a politics that is more expansive, a lot fatter, if you will, than the snaking line that goes to the polling booth, right? A politics that goes beyond electing representation, you know, or politics that is more, I'm not saying we dismiss that. We cannot dismiss a politics of critique. We cannot dismiss a politics of recognition, but I think it needs to be supplemented by an underground politics, something different. What Fela and Nicola Kuti, right, the father of Afrobeats, would have called animal politics, right? He rejected human rights, right? Like, take away your human rights. We don't want your human rights. I don't want to be recognized within your UN system, because I know the violence, the quotidian violence that comes with your benevolence. So take it away. We will form our animal politics. This underground spiritual beats is what they called it.
I love this, animal politics. I love this.
Yes, animism is the politics that I'm about to do. We need a process of inquiry, decolonial inquiry. It may not take the form and shape of a party. It shouldn't. I hope it doesn't become institutionalized that way, because that's capturable. That's too intelligible. It has to look like what was the name of this underground world that was discovered just before the pandemic was announced?
Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
It's a bacterial. It's called a zombie bacterial sphere, basically.
Okay.
They found, you know, this dense world, this overpopulated world beneath the soil that does not require sunlight. You know, so they call them zombie bacteria, right? So there's a party, is what I'm saying. There's a party going on beneath our feet.
Yes.
Beneath the surface, there is life alien. There is some intraterrestrial or extraterrestrial kind of life, bacchanal carnivalesque festival that is ongoing. And I think to feed the decolonial politics that needs to happen at this time. Why a decolonial politics? Because we're stuck. We don't know where to go. Blackness does not know where to go. Masculinity is trapped in the city, and all it can do is just respond to the furniture around it. I think masculinity needs to travel. It needs to be liberated, like the Igbo slaves, you know, that were captured and brought to Dunbar Creek in the 19th century. It needs to travel, it needs to fly. It's an environmental constraint, what we call masculinity. The ontology is still happening. It's still an ongoing thing, what it means to be male, right? Or what it means to be not male. And so, but it's trapped within the city. It's trapped within the imperative of progress and growth and capitalism and development. And now we need a break, brother. We need an opening. We need a fugitive break from this plantation. How do we do this without repeating the plantation? We need to open ourselves to our wounds, right?
Yes.
To the shadows. We need ways of concatenizing or putting into an altar the places that we have been taught to pathologize, right? The places that we have been taught to push away so that we can get back to being productive.
You know, there's a really important piece there, because truly there is no they outside of us, because we are all part of this web, because the environment is the energy that we're all a part of. It's like we have to do the inner work to excavate and bring some of those shadows into the light. For ourselves, because it will never happen outside of ourselves. It just won't.
Right.
And so this is a lot of the work that Sacred Sons is doing as we bring men through to kind of face and be confronted by their behaviors, their actions, their responsibility or lack of responsibility. And so what I wanted to ask you here, though, because there's another piece that we bring through, which is a polar opposite of the decolonial work, which we're calling re-indigenization. Okay. And so how does it feel for you when you think about some of the traditions that maybe you grew up with or were exposed to, and that those places are becoming westernized and the traditions are being lost, and our connection to the directions and the elements and rituals is being lost? You know, how do we re-indigenize? Because it's not necessarily about tearing down what's current. It's about getting back into connection with nature, with water, with the land, and with each other.
Right. There's a lot to say here. I also want to just put a pin and just note that I want to say something later about inner work that I feel is very important to say.
You can bring through that now if you like.
Okay, I feel this is more proximate to address at the moment. There's something about the way people speak about decoloniality that I find fascinating. There is a sense and it's used, it's almost a vacuous concept right now. People throw it around. Yeah. Everyone is decolonizing from decolonization. It's like the other vacuous concept, trauma. Without dismissing suffering, the way we language trauma, the way we make it an ideology, and I think a while ago a paper was released that even the word trigger is becoming triggering, right? Just to say trigger. So there's a way that we use the word decoloniality that I feel needs to be unpacked in certain ways. Okay. And that might help us think through what you're presenting as a concept of re-indigenization. Some might insist that decoloniality is returning to the image of something lost and original, right? Like in, was it 1897, British soldiers ransacked the city of Benin and shackled the Oba of Benin, burnt the palace to the ground, and took the artifacts, and they're now in museums across the West, right? There is a sense in which we want to think about decoloniality as reclaiming what was lost. But that's not the only sense that is possible. Decoloniality, for me, and I think for a few others that I'm thinking along with, is not about reclaiming that was lost. It's about noticing what emerges or what is emerging in the moment, and noticing how we are often trapped in our attempts to recover what was lost, right? And in trying to recover what was lost, we often repeat, or reinscribe colonial dynamics,
right?
Yes.
Because
So
because we're in a reactionary state to the colonialism,
mm,
to the colonization.
yeah.
We're reacting to it, so it's almost like we become a part of it.
Yes, we are hybrid. We're hybrid beings. There isn't something pure to return to. You know, this is not reconstructionism. I think this is what the literature might think of it as. We're not trying to go back to the past. We're trying to disturb the linearity of time itself. So there's something different. It's not, we're not going back to there's no back, right? There's no
Yes.
back in it. So time isn't that straight and narrow. Time is slushy. There are ancestors here as we speak. How do
Yes.
we pay attention to what is already here right now? So it's not about recovering an old image. And I can tell you stories about, real life accounts about people trying to recover some old story, and the trickster spirits come in and they present, you want to recover an image of how culture used to be? Here's an iPhone. Put that in your art. And you're like, iPhone? No, no, iPhone is not a representation of the ancient culture, but culture is a trace, a static image of what is constantly flowing. There's nothing to recover in a final sense.
So I love that. I just
do,
got this image, like culture as a transect of a river, and so you can really only see like this slice of a river, but the real juice of it is a flowing, raging, rushing river with banks and rocks and trees, and to just look at a cross section and idolize that is almost more colonization.
Yes, it's a museumization. It's a sterilization of stuff that is still performatively processual and relational. This is what the philosopher Heraclitus, I think, would meant when he said you cannot dip your foot in the same river twice, right? The river is constantly changing. And I love the retort of his students saying, well, you cannot dip your leg in the same river once, right? Not even once.
Not even once.
Not even
love
once.
that.
Emergence is, and that doesn't mean there are no structures or stabilities, but that those stabilities are indebted to flows and liminal flows. But back to my point, because I digress a lot. I think that I would need to hear more about what you mean by re-indigenization, but I think of decoloniality not as a recovery of something lost, but as an imbrication with lostness. But I feel my heart dancing with it, because like I said earlier, and this may have escaped us, even me, that masculinity is always a becoming, right? It's not still. It's not an image. It's not platonic. It's not an ideal somewhere. It is a response to environmental constraints, right? It is an ecological secretion, right? So the meaning of what it means to be masculine, I never think about the masculine as a divine, well, in the way that people think about the divine as something outside of the material, because I think material is already divine. So I never think of it as something already essential and closed and universal. I think of it as this worldly, creaturely, fragile practice of becoming in sync and possibly out of sync, because we need out of sync moments too, with an environment that is constantly changing, right? Yes. And so when you say we're turning our attention to the sun, we're turning our attention to other things around us other than screens and laptops and TV, it's a becoming responsible in a different way. You're not restoring a past, you're shaping and co-creating a different form of masculinity, right? And this masculinity could be a beautiful line of flight away from the cycles of trappedness and imprisonment that we find ourselves. So brother, keep on experimenting is what I'm trying to say. This is novelty trying to find its way. There's always the risk of the city or the morality of civilization pulling back that fugitive with its dogs and bringing it back to do labor. This is what masculinity means. Wear a suit, work hard, labor in the wheel, die as you do all of this. there's always that possibility. But I think you are, as I hear you, I'm hearing a soft masculinity, a masculinity that is loamy, that is available to soil, green, that is available to children, that wants to lean into what children are saying instead of stand out and direct, right? There's something beautiful about that, and I'm deeply attracted to it.
Yeah, there's a particular playfulness as well. Like
Playfulness.
there's a piece of the static masculinity that our culture currently dances with that doesn't allow for the softness, doesn't allow for the play, doesn't allow for the mistakes.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Because that masculinity is an industrial project.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah. We live in an industrial society.
Yeah.
And I guess the call is, how do we bring more of the natural world back into our hearts? How do we begin to respond to those things versus the industrial society? Let me bring you back to inner work. I'm very interested in what your take on inner work is, and why that brought up a little flag for you.
I'm usually very suspicious. Well, suspicion is not the language here, but wary and cautious when I hear speak about the self as a thing unto itself, as something self-evident, as something independent and apart. It's modern language. And again, I don't mean to pathologize modernity. Modernity is a way of creating place, right? It has its risks and shadows as well. But because of what we're trying to do, and because of the place we're at, that is only, if I were to create a sci-fi novel, I'll probably call modernity tautologium, right? We're in a tautological economy. All our activisms are reinforcing the structures that we're trying to leave behind. Yes. The left is feeding the right is feeding the left. Cancel culture is recanceling itself and recreating the villains that it doesn't want to see. So we're stuck in this archetypal repeatability. Yeah. And what some of us are looking for is breakthrough, something different. That's not utopia. It's just the ability for the body to do other things, right?
Yes. Yeah, pattern interrupt. That cycle, that pattern that we're in, a lot of us are looking for a pattern interrupt.
Right.
Let me step away from my life outside of reality. Let me go into the forest and let me just be out here for a second so I can just get a sense of what it feels like to be me. Okay, back into the matrix. You know what I'm saying? So and I guess my point in all of that, how do I bring a little bit of this forest, because it's also not about some idealistic escapism into utopia or into some community that's going to have no shadows and no turmoil. I mean, that's not what it is. When I speak of inner work, it's more about responsibility for my own energy, responsibility for my own actions and behaviors, and being honest about it. Our work starts with honesty, truly.
Yes.
Well, first it starts with confidentiality and then honesty.
Okay. So you just offered a beautiful gift to me, then something quite generative. Then I like to use story. I'm Yoruba, I can't help myself, but this is something you shouldn't tell anyone. Okay, don't tell anyone this that I told you. Spoiler alert. I'm writing. My next book is about a god issue who's trapped in the middle of the Atlantic. He's trapped there by his brother, who is the god of iron. I'm not going to give you the details. They fought. They had a brotherly war, and Issue, who's on a slave ship heading to the New World, is frozen in the middle of the ocean in a steel box. How do you capture a trickster is at the heart of this novel. How do you imprison something that shapeshifts or defies boundaries is a riddle at the heart of this novel. So I'm not going to tell you more than that, except to say that sometimes in order to defeat the boxes we're trapped in, we create new boxes. I remember saying at a Rwandan African conference, Prime Minister was there. I was invited to give some final closing comments. And I got up on stage because throughout the conference, all the remarks were basically, let's think outside the box. Let's think outside the box. I was feeling it in the air. It was a meme, very, very infectious meme before COVID. And then I got up on stage and said, you know, thinking outside the box is often how boxes think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, they applauded that. They loved it. But when I got back to my seat, the DJ got up on stage and said, see, our last speaker just told us to think outside the box. And everyone applauded again. It was back to square one. Right.
Yes.
But
you know what we say? You know what we say as Sacred Sons? I'm going to quote my brother, Kyah. Burn that box. Destroy that box. That box is fuel for a fire, for a new fire. And we're like, no more boxes out here.
You know what I'll say? Using your metaphor of going away from the box to the forest,
sure,
and not wanting to create a trope of escapism, you know, I would say, notice the forest that is the box, or notice that the box is also a forest. You know what coloniality is? It is a stabilization of possibilities, right? It is basically saying, okay, this might be an embarrassing thing to put on. It's basically saying that this is just a hairbrush. This is my favorite hairbrush. I'm not sure what I'm doing, but this is just a hairbrush, a very, very African looking hairbrush. This is just a hairbrush. Decoloniality is, no, this is many things. This is, brother, help me out here.
This is polyurethane. This is bristles. This took time to bring these different chemicals out of the earth, put them together in a way with a ergonomic handle, such that this could be our brother Bayo's favorite brush. It takes so many hands and so many lands to create that brush.
This is also the prototype for a vehicle that's coming out in 2050, a land, sea, air, multi-terrain vehicle that is coming out. That's decoloniality. It's like playful reality.
Oh, you're going back to the children and just the imaginings.
Yes, playfulness. Like coloniality is like, we need to be safe, so we can only think of this categorically. It's a comb. That's it. I can only think about my brother Adam categorically. He is a black guy. That's it. But reality is a lot more promiscuous than those static accounts. Reality is ecstatic. That is outside of itself. It's constantly unfaithful.
Yes, man. You just brought this up for me around raising my children, because I have a 2-year-old and he'll grab something and I'll say, no, that's not a toy. But to him, man, all this stuff is a toy. Well, I'm going to show you something embarrassing too. So, well, here's a Bic lighter, you know, and if my son picks this up, he might think this is a submarine. But here I am with my box imposing my own colonization onto him. I say, no, this is a dangerous tool for you, a 2-year-old. And that may be true in respect. However, it's that no. It's the no, it's this that we reinforce the boxes. Yes,
because to him, that's a space gun. That's his adventure.
Yeah.
You know, through space-time, through planets. That's what rap is, right? That's what hip-hop is. That's what the Trickster is. It's like,
it's unboxing.
If you're so stuck. So the Trickster knows how to touch the box. It knows how to love the box enough to expose, like an orgasmic event, all its pleasures, all its sensuous multiplicities, that the box has never been the box. Even the city is a forest, right? And And that is
Love that.
that is what we want to do here. We want to inquire into the multiplicities that have been closed down by colonial capture, right? And that's what the Trickster first did in our own accounts, the Yoruba tellings of the transatlantic slave trade, that when Eshu stole into those slave ships and hid among the slaves, he made the slave ship a womb. It wasn't just a wooden prison anymore. It was a womb. It became candomblé. It became Santeria. It became Gayap economies. It became How Low Can You Go? It became hip hop. It became all the creolized bodies and futures and samba and all of that. It needed the Trickster. So we are at a time when we need Trickster brothers. Sometimes we will enact the thing we're trying to escape from. This is why I think with some wariness and caution around those survivalist camps that try to leave modernity behind in order to preserve themselves, and ironically preserving modernity as they do so. What you want to do is to touch and listen. And maybe just by listening to your son, even though you want to protect him as much as possible, the practical is always part of the theoretical. Well, when you lean into your son, when he says that this is my toy, you want to listen to that. Even as you say no, you want to create room for that to happen in some sense, to navigate the tensions of that moment. And that is the kind of politics I'm looking for.
Beautiful. This is a beautiful analogy. What you just reframed for me is that it's not a box, it's a womb.
Yeah.
And the magic of a womb has the ability to birth the new, to create the new, to create the new imaginings, the new ideas. And so to see, I really like this reframe, from a box to a womb.
Yes.
Very beautiful.
Yes.
All right. So you have a third book in process.
Yes, I do.
You know, what's your, just on a personal level, what is inspiring you to write these books? Where is that coming from within you? Maybe I don't want to project your desire, but the call to put this down in story form and share it with the world.
If I could speak to that and articulate that in any way that is sensible, I would be lying. I would be lying out of my butt. It's not that easy, brother. What I would say, this is a drawing on history. This is a noticing that we are possessed. And this is also being grateful, a sharing of gratitude to the times itself. Genius is not some property of individuals. I think genius is the times. What you're doing, brother, could not have been possible maybe in other times. It's a creation of thought in its matrixual emergence that has made room for you to explore the things you're exploring, with Sacred Sons. So I think that I need to do this to survive. It's more than I need to do it. I need to tell stories this way. I need to be adversarial sometimes and yet trickstery in my analysis. I need to subvert conventional habitual modes of perception. I need to do that. And maybe the gifts of my culture, we are storytellers.
Yes.
Par excellence. We love the storytelling format. We have call and response dynamics. I don't know if you've been to any church ever in your life, any Black church. You have been to a Black church. Well, say thank you, brother. Just say thank you. I will accept your gratitude. Say thank you. Say thank you to us. The call and response dynamic, the Yoruba tradition. Hello, it transported itself and became Black culture and all of it. So I'm grateful for the gifts. I'm grateful for the shadows, the glitches, just where we began from. But I find myself unable to fully capture what it is that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah. There's an element of surrender in that.
Indeed.
Surrender to the unknown. So
Indeed.
there's a big buzzword as well called purpose. We talk in Sacred Sons, we talk a lot about purpose. You know, a man who is not on purpose is like a dog without a bone. He'll chew up your couch, he'll cause a ruckus, he'll, you know, dig up the yard. But you give that dog a bone, a purpose, he'll sit there and gnaw on that bone all day. And so is this something that resonates with you as your purpose, you know, to bring these stories through and to continue the tradition that you are so fortunate and blessed and, you know, expressing gratitude to be a part of?
I never liked the word.
I felt you like you were going to say that. Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Oh man, but that's not the sum total of our.
How about Dharma? You like Dharma better? I know you're living in India.
No, maybe not. I don't think it. But that's not the sum total of what I want to say. That's for shock value, I know.
Yes.
But a brief genealogy of my relationships with purpose would take me through, or take us through, my Christian upbringing and my being raised in an evangelistic Pentecostal charismatic tradition that imagined purpose to be some kind of instrumental predetermination of bodies and destinies that I found distasteful over time. And what I mean by that is someone basically saying, Adam has a purpose that has been predetermined by God, right? Before Adam became Adam, right? All Adam has to do is to discover it right now. Just like a microphone has a purpose, that Adam has a purpose, right? And Bayo has a purpose, right? And then you start to get into the weeds with that analysis when you ask, what about the market woman who must sell tomatoes to us? And the billionaire in his private jet, you say, oh, the market woman, the purpose of the market woman is to serve me, right? The gate man's purpose is to serve me while I jet around the world preaching the gospel. Then it started to get ethically challenging then for me. But even more so, I think the final critical place, at least for the sake of our conversation, is purpose as a stabilization of bodies that does not allow for emergence, right? If Adam is predetermined in a particular way, then we must think about reality as an ontology, a binary ontology that replicates this Christocentric colonial dimensions. Like there's a transcendent world where everything is made up, where there are categories of thought, and then the work of the material is just to replicate the divine. And I find that really, I find that while there's room for that, there's always room for that, I do find that upsetting in a way, because I want to play. Yeah. I like stories where the hero is set up to succeed, but at the very end, in the third act, the hero is like, nah, I don't want to, you know what? I'm not going to win this race. I'm just going to turn to that woman and love her up and just be with her for all time. You know, and it ends. There's no victory. There's no yay. It just ends with me stopping at the finish line and saying, I'm not going to cross this place. But, you know, that does not mean we cannot reclaim purpose. You know, I still feel that my ontologies and socio-material analysis, you know, are generous enough to allow that we can work with purpose in new ways, right? We can invite it in to do other kinds of work other than confirming something transcendent. So I would want to be in a place where I would come to your home, Adam. The first thing you would do is to give me a hug, and then you give me fried chicken. I'm not saying anything to you until you give me fried chicken. Gotcha. And then I eat, I sleep, I get up, and then you take me on a journey together where I can listen and immerse myself in what purpose is looking like in your own locality. So that is how I would think about that. Yes, instead of giving a blanket statement. Yes.
Yeah, purpose in space and time and location. Yeah, and the truth of it is, like, we are always on purpose, and there are many situations in our life that are purposeful to us. And I work with I work with a lot of men who are, they're grinding for their families. They're doing the cubicle
Right.
thing, and or whatever it is,
Yes.
driving the
Yes.
truck. And it's like, oh, I'm
Yes.
just driving this truck, and I'm like, is that allowing you to feed and support your family? Yes.
Yes.
Is that allowing you to put your children, give them a good education? Yes. Is that allowing you to like have a little freedom, cook some good, delicious meals and pray around a table? Yes. Like, well, what's wrong with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so there's I guess just to add to what you're saying is there's an element to the conversation around purpose that makes people feel like they're lacking it. And
Oh
that's the
yeah.
part, that maybe that I don't resonate with quite as much.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing then. I mean, if the flu can be researched as a cure for cancer, then nothing is outside. Everything is potentially medicinal. Even the things that I might personally have abandoned as concepts in my history that were disturbing can be medicinal in my journey. So that's why we need to be open and alive. Purpose could be a way of reinvigorating our lives with a sense of the sacred that disturbs the humdrum and the boredom of modernity. It can infuse surprise, a politics of surprise, right? And that is beautiful. It has its risks, but yeah, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So I'm going to bring it down to your work before we close up. You are the founder and director of the Emergence Network.
Yes.
Could you just tell us a little bit about that and where we can find more of your work or contribute to the Emergence Network?
Thank you very much, brother. So we founded the Emergence Network as a holding space for what I call post-activism. And post-activism is not after activism, as the name might suggest, is not beyond activism, is not a cocksure, overly confident, highfalutin way of saying, we figured everything out, this is what you should do, be spiritual, do yoga every day, and we can solve all our problems. That's not the basis. Post-activism is the equivalent of the Hiroshima bomb blasts of 1945 in thought, right? It's a place where thought can no longer continue. It's where we mark in the forest, and I'm sure you do this all the time when you're navigating dense fields. As a cartographical product, you might mark a tree to know where you've been, right? So you can come back to that, right? Post-activism is that mark to say, now we cannot continue in the ways we've continued from here on out. It's the blast that stops continuity and encourages us to shapeshift, to acknowledge that there are others in the room. So I call it a site of exposure. And if I were to go deeper, I would speak about the Afro scene. These are other concepts of mine, and ontofugitivity and all of that. But for now, the Emergence Network is dedicated to envisioning and convening a planetary network of festivals. And by festival, I don't mean literal. I mean, maybe I should put it this way, by convening a festival politics.
Okay.
Inquiry that recognizes that maybe the way we respond to crisis is part of the crisis. Maybe healing itself is becoming sick. And what do you do when the medicine is sick itself? Then you need a break from that circle, that toxic cyclicity. So what we do is to bring people together to research, to perform in their hubs, in their localities, in their communities, ways of thinking with the world around them, a different kind of politics. So this is underground spiritual rhythms, right? It's not about we don't want to speak truth to power, right? Yeah. We don't want to dismiss that either, but I think there's something else we can do. At the moment, I sit as the visionary founder of this, but there is a hibernation process that is now emerging, And a community is now coming up to take the Emergence Network to a different place. So my work is to champion and to speak about it wherever I go. And quite shortly, we will come up with ways for people to participate and be part of what we're doing, build alliances with us. Yeah.
Yes. I feel like the work you're doing is very much in alignment with the work that Sacred Sons is doing as well.
Right. Right.
We're, like I said to you before we got started, we're out in the field getting our hands dirty, doing the dirty work, getting deep, and we're also celebrating, we're also singing songs, we're also praying together. So we're in that field of emergence, truly.
I love it.
And it's also it's a calling of cultures to begin to come together outside of the narratives, outside of the belief systems, outside of the dogma. It's like just
the ocean of curds, brother. The ocean of curds. Yes.
Come and bring your own authentic self, and there's a seat for you at the table, kind of energy.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. It's lovely.
Thank you, Dr. Bayo, for your work, for your time, for your thoughts that you shared with us. Is there anything else that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who may be listening?
You're not alone. You are connected to archetypes and spirits and communities and trees and evolutionary processes and deep time and deep space and rhizomatic possibilities. You're not alone. The idea that you're slugging through a field of shit on your own is the myth of modernity. So notice that even in the places where you bleed, because I think masculinity is also menstrual, that even in the places where you bleed are the voices that hopefully might remind you that you are not in this on your own, that the idea of the individual only gets in the way of the wealth and the abundance and the generosity that you are a part of, right? So I would end with this. A wave of an ocean does not aspire to become the ocean one day. It is already the ocean in its stunning specificity and materiality. Let's celebrate that in all the ways that we can.
Beautiful. Celebrate the wave that you are. Come back to the ocean. You are not alone. We are all in this. We are all in this together. I am, because we are. Bayo Akomolafe, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We are all in this together. We're out. Peace.